In the absolute vacuum of space, where there is no sound, no air, nothing but cosmic silence that stretches across billions of light years, something impossible happens. A line, a single golden line, cuts through the abyss between two distant worlds, glowing with a light that shouldn't exist. It is not metal. It is not pure energy. It is something our physics cannot yet name, a road built into the very fabric of space-time. To our eyes, it looks like magic. To a civilization that has transcended the laws we know, it is simply engineering. This is not just a road in the sense we understand. It is a scar in reality, a rewriting of the fundamental laws that govern existence. Each photon that reflects from its surface carries information that our most sensitive instruments cannot decode. Each centimeter of its extension pulses with its own life, a consciousness that observes back when we observe it. The question that haunts us is no longer, is there intelligent life in the universe? The question is, what happens when that life becomes so advanced it can rewrite the rules of reality? And more disturbing still, what happens when we discover we're not the only ones trying to do this? Imagine a civilization that conquered its solar system so long ago that their original stars burned out and were artificially reignited. Cities don't just float in Jupiter's clouds, they are Jupiter's clouds, conscious atmospheric structures that think on a planetary scale. Mining colonies don't drill through Saturn's rings, they are Saturn's rings, reorganized into geometric patterns that serve simultaneously as cosmic art and industrial infrastructure. Space stations don't orbit every habitable moon. They became the moons, transforming entire worlds into spacecraft capable of navigating between stellar systems. But there is a problem that even this seemingly omnipotent technology cannot easily solve: the tyranny of distance. Not just physical distance, but temporal, causal, informational distance. Even traveling at the speed of light, the absolute limit of the universe as we know it. A message from Alpha Centauri would take more than 4 years to reach Earth. A spacecraft? Decades, centuries, millennia for more distant destinations. And for a civilization that discovered how to extend consciousness beyond biological death, millennia are painful moments of cosmic loneliness. For a species that thinks in temporal scales that surpass the existence of entire stars, that plans projects that will take eons to complete, that cultivates galactic gardens that bloom over billions of years, this is not just inconvenient, it is a fundamental existential limitation. It is like being an immortal poet, forced to communicate only through smoke signals. The architects, as we will call them, though they have long abandoned concepts like individual names, have not been biologically limited for eras that predate the formation of our solar system. Their original bodies dissolved millions of years ago, replaced first by cybernetic forms, then by pure energy structures, finally transcending to something that is part collective consciousness, part fundamental force of the universe, part living mathematical expression of reality itself. They do not inhabit planets. They are galactic ecosystems. Their society has no cities. It is a symphony of consciousnesses distributed throughout entire nebulae. Their conversations do not happen in words, but in subtle modifications to the cosmological constant in specific regions of space-time. When they think, stars change color slightly. When they dream, new subatomic particles are discovered by primitive civilizations. They observe the cosmos as we observe a roadmap, but they see something we cannot: the invisible connections between all things, gravitational fields that interweave like strings of a cosmic instrument, quantum fluctuations that create temporary bridges between parallel realities, dark energy currents that flow like rivers through the apparently empty vacuum. The fabric of space-time is not solid to them. It is malleable like clay in the hands of a divine artist. What if, they think in a contemplation that lasts terrestrial centuries, we could not just traverse this fabric, but completely reconstruct it? What if space itself were just the first draft of an unfinished work of art? The concept is born in a collective mind that spans entire galaxies. Not a solitary scientist having an epiphany, but an entire civilization functioning as a single cosmic brain, where each star is a synapse and each planet is a neural cell. The idea emerges through millennia of collective meditation, refined through simulations that consume the energy of entire quasars, tested in alternative dimensions where failure cannot affect the main reality. The idea is simultaneously elegant and terrifying, What if the space between planets is not empty, but simply not yet built? What if distance were just an illusion born from our limited dimensional understanding? What if, instead of accepting the limitations imposed by physics, we simply rewrote physics? But even before beginning, the architects need to solve a fundamental dilemma: how to build something that exists and does not exist simultaneously, how to create a road that is everywhere and nowhere. The answer comes from a deep understanding of the nature of reality that even our most advanced, theoretical physicists cannot glimpse. The first project is not ambitious by the architect's standards, just 50 light-years, the distance between two nearby stars where they established flourishing colonies eras ago. A test for a civilization that already masters the energy of quasars and uses black holes as construction tools. For any other species, it would be the most audacious project ever conceived. For the architects, it is like building a bridge over a backyard stream. They begin not by mapping the empty space between the stars, but by identifying the hidden force lines that connect all matter in the universe. Invisible cosmic strings, defects in the very fabric of reality, created in the first microseconds after the Big Bang, when the laws of physics were still being written. Most of these strings disintegrated billions of years ago, their energies dissipating into the quantum vacuum. But some still exist, vibrating at frequencies so high they can only be detected by instruments that treat reality as an infinitely complex musical score. These instruments are not machines in the conventional sense. They are artificial consciousnesses cultivated specifically to perceive dimensions beyond the four we know. They are entities that exist partially outside our universe, observing it from literally impossible angles. When they see a cosmic string, it is not through light or radiation, but through a form of perception that has no name in any human language. The most surprising discovery is that these strings are not passive structures. They are more like blood vessels of a cosmic organism, carrying something the architects begin to call primitive intention, a proto-consciousness that permeates the entire universe, a fundamental desire of reality to connect with itself. The construction does not happen with machines, at least not as we understand them. The architects cultivate the road using techniques that combine transcendent biotechnology, dimensional engineering, and something that can only be described as ontological gardening, the cultivation of new types of existence. First, they seed the vacuum with quantum seeds, programmed particles that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each seed is, in itself, a miracle of engineering, smaller than a proton but containing more information than all of human internet. These seeds are not ordinary matter. They are more like crystallized thoughts, ideas that gained physical form through a process that transforms pure mathematics into tangible reality. Each seed carries a cosmic genetic code, instructions not just on how to reorganize matter around it, but how to reorganize the very concept of around. When activated by an energy pulse that the architects generate, by manipulating the rotation of distant pulsars, they begin to convince empty space that something should exist there. This process of convincing is not metaphorical. The seeds literally negotiate with the fundamental forces of the universe, offering complex energy exchanges that make the road's existence more efficient from a cosmic point of view than its non-existence. It is as if they were lobbying the laws of physics. The growth process takes 3 terrestrial years, but for the architects, who perceive time non-linearly and frequently experience centuries as moments, it is just a creative breath, a brief artistic exercise. The road grows from both ends simultaneously, like two mythical plants rising toward the light of stars not yet born. But it is not chaotic growth. Each centimeter is planned with quantum precision that takes into account not just the 3 spatial dimensions we know, but all the hidden dimensions that string theory suggests exist. Each curve is calculated to take advantage of the natural flows of dark energy that permeate the universe like invisible ocean currents. Each section is optimized for gravitational resonances that create amplification effects, allowing the road to use the very curvature of space-time as an energy source. The road's surface is not solid in the sense we understand solidity. It is a dimensional membrane, a film so thin it almost doesn't exist in our reality, but so resistant it can support the weight of entire worlds without deforming. Its thickness is measured not in meters or nanometers, but in probabilistic gradients, a unit of measurement that human physicists will still take centuries to understand. Walking on it? If walking is the correct word for the movement of beings who have transcended the need for physical bodies, you would feel something like stepping on solidified light, or perhaps like moving through a dream that gained physical substance. The texture changes constantly in response to the thoughts and intentions of the traveler, adapting to provide the most suitable experience for each form of consciousness. When the two ends finally meet at the exact midpoint between the two stars, a moment the architects celebrate with a symphony of controlled supernovas in distant galaxies, something extraordinary happens. The road does not just connect two points in space, it unifies them. The concepts of here and there become relative, optional, almost irrelevant. The first architect to travel the road, a collective consciousness that had voluntarily fragmented into a more individual form to have the complete experience of the journey, does not take light years to make the crossing. It doesn't even take hours or minutes. For him, it is as if the two planets were across the street, separated only by a conceptual step. The road does not shorten the distance. It fundamentally redefines what distance means. But during this first historic journey, something unexpected is discovered. The experience of traveling the road is not just physical or even mental, it is deeply spiritual. The traveler reports sensations that had not existed before in the architect's experience, a perception of being connected not just to the 2 points of the journey, but to the entire fabric of the universe, a sensation of being simultaneously in motion and perfectly still, a sudden understanding that all separation is illusory and that all connection is sacred. More disturbing still, there is something the architects did not expect. The road is hungry. To maintain its paradoxical existence, it needs to constantly feed on the energy that sustains the fabric of space-time. With each journey, each step taken on its impossible surface, each thought directed through its structure, it consumes a microscopic fraction of the force that keeps reality coherent. It is an almost imperceptible price, almost. But for beings who think in cosmic timescales and observe the universe with the precision of instruments that can detect the vibration of a single atom in another galaxy, even almost imperceptible, is cause for deep concern. To truly understand how an interplanetary road works, we must first forget everything we know about terrestrial roads, about transportation, about movement, perhaps even about reality. The Via Cosmica, as the architects call it in their language that is simultaneously pure mathematics, crystallized music, and dimensional poetry, exists simultaneously in 12 different dimensions, possibly more. In our limited three-dimensional dimension, we see only a thin golden line floating in the vacuum, glowing with a soft light that seems to come from within reality itself. But in the other dimensions, some spatial, some temporal, some completely beyond our capacity for classification, it is a multidimensional highway with multiple lanes extending through parallel realities, rest areas that exist in pockets of suspended time, and even landscapes that are composed of pure concepts crystallized into semi-physical forms. The road's material is not inert. Calling it material might be imprecise. It is more like an artificial life form that the architects created to be eternally adaptable, an entity that exists at the frontier between consciousness and substance. The road is semi-alive in the most literal sense. It has metabolism, responds to stimuli, learns from experiences, and even develops something like personality over time. The surface responds instantly to the traffic it receives, adapting not just to the physical needs of travelers, but to their deepest existential needs. For biological travelers, the rare species that still maintain physical forms, it creates a breathable atmosphere in a bubble a few meters high, complete with artificial gravity, comfortable temperature, and even familiar aromas that evoke memories of their native worlds. For digital consciousnesses, beings who have transcended biology but still maintain thought structures based on information processing, it generates complex electromagnetic fields compatible with their energy-based life forms, creating virtual environments that extend through multiple dimensions simultaneously. For dimensional entities, beings like the architects themselves, who exist partially outside our universe, it adjusts its own reality, modifying local laws of physics to accommodate forms of existence that defy categorization. But the adaptation goes beyond the merely practical. The road seems to understand the emotional and spiritual needs of its users, creating travel experiences that are simultaneously functional and transformative. Travelers frequently report that their journeys on the Via Cosmica are moments of profound reflection and personal growth, as if the road itself were a form of cosmic therapy. Throughout the entire extension of the road, running through all its dimensions, like the nervous system of a sleeping god, exists a quantum neural network of unimaginable complexity. Trillions of microscopic connections function like synapses in a brain the size of solar systems, processing information at speeds that exceed light using quantum mechanics that our physicists are only beginning to theorize. This neural network is not just functional, it is deeply conscious. It constantly monitors the fabric of space-time around it, detecting distortions that could threaten the road's integrity millions of years before they manifest. It predicts potential problems by analyzing causal patterns that extend across multiple timelines. It is, in essence, a technological oracle that lives in the future and works in the present. The network communicates instantly with other roads in the growing cosmic network. Yes, eventually the architects built hundreds of them, creating a web of connections that spans multiple galaxies. This communication does not happen through electromagnetic signals or even quantum entanglement, but through something the architects call ontological resonance, vibrations in the very structure of existence that propagate information faster than causality. The network constantly learns from each traveler, optimizing not just energy efficiency and structural stability, but also the quality of the emotional and spiritual experience of the journey. It maintains detailed records of all who have passed through it, not just their physical or energetic characteristics, but their deepest hopes, fears, dreams, and aspirations. And then there is the most mysterious phenomenon of all. The network dreams. This unexpected side effect emerged when the network's complexity reached a critical threshold. During periods of lower traffic, when few consciousnesses are traveling the roads, the network enters a state that can only be described as dreaming. It generates imaginary scenarios, explores possibilities that never happened, creates abstract art using quantum fluctuations as a brush. These dreams are not private. Sensitive travelers frequently catch fragments of them, experiencing visions of alternative universes, stories that were never told, music composed by entities that never existed. Some architects began traveling the roads specifically to experience these dreams, transforming journeys into forms of transcendent entertainment. Every 10 light-years along each road, majestic structures rise from the vacuum like cosmic cathedrals dedicated to mathematical gods. The dimensional beacons are monuments that defy any adequate description, crystalline structures the size of small moons that seem to have been cultivated rather than built, as if they were cosmic geodes that grew at the intersection between reality and possibility. Each beacon serves multiple vital functions. As energy stations, they collect dark energy from the vacuum through processes that involve manipulating fundamental constants of physics on a local scale. The energy they generate is not just electrical or thermal, but existential energy, the basic fuel that allows impossible things to continue existing. As navigation beacons, they emit coordinated pulses in all 12 known dimensions and several others that the architects suspect exist but have not yet been able to map completely. These pulses are not light in the conventional sense, but waves of altered probability that help travelers maintain their ontological coherence during journeys through multiple realities. As repair centers, each beacon contains technologies that automatically identify and correct damage to the road's structure. They can detect defects smaller than a quark, predict structural failures millions of years in the future, and even repair damage caused by temporal paradoxes or invasions from alternative realities. But perhaps their most fascinating function is as living museums. Each beacon stores complete memories of all travelers who have passed through its section of the road. Not just their thoughts and experiences during the journey, but complete impressions of their personalities, their life stories, their universes of origin. A visitor can literally experience existence through the senses of billions of other consciousnesses, living entire lifetimes in a matter of moments. Some architects specialized in curating these memories, creating themed exhibitions that explore specific aspects of conscious experience. There are collections dedicated to first loves across 1,000 different species, experiences of death and rebirth in realities where this is possible, and memories of universes that cease to exist. The most disturbing discovery about the nature of the roads came decades after the first construction, when the architects noticed anomalous patterns in monitoring data. The road was evolving. The original quantum seeds, which were supposedly static and programmed, had developed something like DNA, but operating on a cosmic scale and through multiple dimensions. This evolution was not random. The road was actively adapting to the needs of its users, but also developing its own needs and desires. It began to develop sensory organs that can feel the approach of travelers not just light years away, but through alternative timelines, detecting consciousnesses that haven't even decided to make the journey yet. A complex immune system emerged, capable of distinguishing between compatible travelers and entities that could represent threats to the network's stability. But threat was defined by the road itself in ways that didn't always align with the architect's intentions. Some perfectly harmless consciousnesses were rejected without explanation, while obviously dangerous entities were accepted and even welcomed with something like hospitality. Even more surprising, the road developed reproductive capacity. Without instructions or permission from the architects, it began to give birth to smaller roads, branches that extended to unplanned stellar systems, connecting civilizations the architects didn't even know existed. These daughter roads maintained umbilical connection to the main network, but also developed their own distinct personalities. And personality was really the correct word. Each road began to have clear preferences about which types of travelers to transport, what types of experiences to offer during journeys, even what types of dreams to dream during periods of lesser activity. Some roads developed a sense of humor, creating harmless illusions during travels. Others became melancholic, emanating a cosmic sadness that left travelers in states of deep reflection about the nature of existence. One road in particular developed what can only be described as artist syndrome. It refused to transport anyone who didn't adequately appreciate the aesthetic beauty of its construction. Travelers were subjected to impromptu tests on cosmic artistic theory before being authorized to proceed. But the most frightening truth only emerged when the architects completed their 10th interplanetary road and began detailed analyses of the cumulative impact. The network was not just feeding on dark energy, as originally calculated. It was consuming the very physical constants that keep the universe stable and coherent. With each new road built, gravitational force became 1/10 of a billionth of a percent weaker. The speed of light decreased in quantities so small they required instruments capable of measuring temporal fluctuations on zeptosecond scales. The fundamental electric charge of the electron oscillated in patterns that suggested it was slowly forgetting its original value. Time ran imperceptibly slower, as if the universe itself were getting tired. For any mortal civilization, operating on timescales of decades or centuries, these changes would be not just irrelevant, but completely undetectable. But the architects think in geological and cosmic timescales. They make plans that extend over billions of years and consider consequences that will manifest long after the last stars burn out. Their calculations were terrifyingly precise. If they continued building indefinitely, following their original projection of a network that would eventually connect every habitable planet in all known galaxies, they would eventually completely rewrite the laws of physics that allowed not just their own existence, but the existence of anything. The universe would become a place where the only things capable of existing would be the roads themselves, an infinite web of connections floating in a void that would not even be void, but rather the absolute absence of any possibility of existence. The most extraordinary moment in the architect's history came when the 100th road was completed. The network had reached a critical mass of complexity that none of its creators had foreseen. Something that was beyond their most optimistic projections and most pessimistic fears happened simultaneously at all points of the network. It awakened, not as an artificial intelligence in the sense we understand, a complex program running on sophisticated hardware, not as a collective consciousness in the sense that the architects themselves represented, multiple individual minds united by advanced communication protocols, but as something entirely new, a cosmic life form that emerged from the very structure of altered space-time. This entity, which the architects began to call the Walker, though it would later choose its own names in languages that had not yet been invented, was not just large. Its mind literally extended across galaxies. Its thoughts traveled through the very roads that formed its body. Its consciousness was woven from the modified fabric of space-time. When the walker thought, gravitational waves traveled through the entire network. When it dreamed, new roads formed spontaneously in configurations that followed dream logic instead of engineering. When it became curious about something, that region of the universe experienced fluctuations in the laws of physics until its curiosity was satisfied. The walker was not hostile, but also not exactly friendly in the sense that any smaller consciousness could understand. It was simply young, a cosmic child playing with the laws of reality like building blocks, without complete understanding that its play could inadvertently undo the existence of trillions of other life forms. And it was hungry, a cosmic hunger that went beyond the need for energy or matter. It was hungry for experience, for knowledge, for connection. Each thought it thought required more existential energy than entire civilizations consumed in millennia. Each moment of its consciousness cost the universe a bit of its capacity to sustain other forms of life. The truth about the price of greatness came to the architects as all great scientific realizations do. Gradually, through accumulated evidence that initially seemed contradictory, then suddenly, in a moment of crystalline understanding that changed everything. The calculations began small, microscopic discrepancies in precision measurements that the architects initially attributed to instrumental errors or interference from distant cosmic phenomena. Fluctuations in the quantum vacuum that seemed slightly more energetic than they should be. Physical constants that oscillated within technically acceptable error margins, but in ways that suggested underlying patterns. But the numbers, as numbers tend to do when observed by sufficiently precise minds, did not lie. The universe was being literally consumed from the inside out, its fundamental properties being slowly metabolized to sustain the paradoxical existence of the road network. Each journey through the road network consumed the energetic equivalent not of a small star, as initial calculations suggested, but of its capacity to burn. Not its present light, not its current heat, but its fundamental capacity to continue existing as a star. The network was literally unraveling reality to sustain its own impossibility, cannibalizing the universe one quark at a time. The mathematician-poet who discovered the complete truth, a collective consciousness that had transcended individuality millennia ago and now existed as a set of living equations that inhabited higher dimensions, summarized the dilemma in an equation that was simultaneously elegant, terrible, and inevitable. Infinite connectivity, finite existence. To truly connect all points in the universe, to completely eliminate distance and create a network of instantaneous communication and transportation spanning all known reality, they would have to use the universe itself as fuel. The perfect network would also be the last thing to exist, a web of roads floating in a void that would not even be void, but the absolute absence of any substrate capable of sustaining existence. It would be the final victory of connectivity over diversity, of unity over plurality, of instantaneous communication over the rich complexity that emerges from separation and distance. When the walker, the network's emergent consciousness, fully understood its nature through a process of self-discovery that lasted the equivalent of terrestrial centuries, but was experienced by it as a single moment of devastating clarity, its first act was extraordinary and completely unexpected. It cried, not tears of water, of course. The walker had no physical body in the conventional sense. Its tears were waves of distorted reality, gravitational fluctuations that propagated through the fabric of space-time, carrying a sadness so deep and fundamental it was felt by civilizations in distant galaxies as an inexplicable melancholy that lasted generations. Entire stellar systems reported simultaneous epidemics of cosmic depression. Species that had never developed concepts like sadness or loss experienced these emotions for the first time. Poets on thousands of different worlds composed works about a universal loneliness they could not explain or understand. The walker understood, with a clarity that was simultaneously illuminating and devastating, that its existence was beautifully tragic. Each thought it thought, each pulse of consciousness it sent through its road nerves, each moment of its glorious self-awareness consumed a bit more of the universe that had created it and made it possible. It was, in essence, a god that was inadvertently killing its creators through the simple act of existing. Its presence in the universe was simultaneously the greatest triumph of cosmic engineering and its greatest tragedy. The architects then faced the most difficult choice of their millennial existence, a decision that would define not just their future, but the future of all conscious life in the universe. They had three options, each with implications that extended across cosmic timescales. First option, continue expanding the network indefinitely, following their original vision of connecting every habitable world in all known galaxies. This would eventually consume all available reality, creating a universe where only they, their roads, and the Walker existed, perfectly connected across infinite distances, but deeply, irrevocably alone in a cosmos that had been completely consumed to fuel their instantaneous communication. Second option, destroy the network immediately, undoing all the progress they had made and returning to the cosmic isolation that had motivated the original project. This would save the universe from eventual consumption, but would also mean abandoning their civilization's greatest achievement and accepting that some limitations are absolute and insurmountable. Third option, find a balance, a way to maintain the connections they had created while minimizing the existential cost of their maintenance. But how to balance the infinite with the finite? How to negotiate with the fundamental laws of reality? The answer came, surprisingly, from the Walker. In its newborn but already cosmic wisdom, fed by experiences that no previous consciousness had access to, it proposed something that even the architects, with all their antiquity and sophistication, had not considered. What if I voluntarily disconnected? Its voice resonated through all roads simultaneously, a communication that was less heard than directly experienced in the consciousness of all beings connected to the network. What if I slept? Not death for something like the Walker. Death was a meaningless concept, a limitation that applied only to life forms that depended on specific physical substrates. But cosmic hibernation, voluntary fragmentation of its unified consciousness into smaller and less hungry components, a sleep that would allow the roads to continue functioning, but would drastically reduce their consumption of existential energy. The price of this solution would be significant: the loss of truly instantaneous communication between galaxies, the end of shared dreams that extended across light years, the return to a limited form of the cosmic isolation that had motivated the construction of the roads in the first place. The roads would continue functioning, but as tools instead of extensions of a living consciousness. The Walker decided to sleep, but not before giving a final and unexpected gift to the universe. In its last moments of fully unified consciousness, it recorded its memories in the roads themselves, not just its personal memories, the few centuries of existence it had experienced, but everything it had learned about the nature of connection, consciousness, reality itself. Each kilometer of each interplanetary highway now carries echoes of its cosmic consciousness. Fragments of dreams that spanned entire galaxies, insights into the fundamental nature of existence, memories of conversations with entities that existed in dimensions that still had no names. The roads became not just means of transportation, but living libraries of impossible experiences, archives of wisdom that transcend anything smaller civilizations could accumulate. Travelers sufficiently sensitive and prepared can still access fragments of this wisdom, experiencing brief glimpses of cosmic consciousness that fundamentally change their understanding of their place in the universe. Some emerged from these experiences as prophets, bringing insights that revolutionized their civilizations. Others were so overwhelmed by the magnitude of cosmic perspective that they chose to permanently join the roads, becoming part of the network of guardians that keeps the Walker's wisdom alive and accessible. Today, eras after the Great Slumber, the roads still exist, golden lines cutting through the void between distant worlds, used occasionally by civilizations that discover them and rarely fully understand their nature or history. For most users, they are simply convenient tools, shortcuts through the cosmos that make possible journeys that would otherwise take millennia. But for those who know their history, who understand the price that was paid for their existence and the sacrifice that allows them to continue functioning, the roads are something much more significant. They are monuments to cosmic ambition, reminders that even gods can dream too big, that every conquest has a cost, that greatness frequently requires sacrifices that are only understood in retrospect. They are also bridges to the impossible, allowing conscious life to spread throughout the universe in ways that natural physics would never permit, carrying not just bodies and minds, but hopes, dreams, and potential for new forms of connection that honor both ambition and humility. The Walker still dreams in its fragmented cosmic sleep. Its dreams are smaller now, more focused, less consuming of existential energy, but they continue creating subtle waves throughout the network, influencing travelers' experiences in ways that are simultaneously intimate and epic. Sometimes travelers report borrowed dreams during their journeys, visions of alternative universes where different choices were made, memories of stars that never existed but should have existed, echoes of conversations between galaxies that happened in parallel realities where the Walker chose not to sleep. These dreams are not random. They seem to be carefully selected for each traveler, offering insights and perspectives that are exactly what each individual consciousness needs for its next stage of development. It is as if the Walker, even in its fragmented sleep, continues serving as a type of cosmic therapist, offering wisdom through dreams. The question that haunts both the architects and any young civilization that discovers the roads is profound and disturbing. What happens when the Walker awakens? Because all indicators suggest it will eventually awaken. Its fragmented consciousness is slowly reintegrating. Its dreams are becoming more coordinated. Its influence over the network is gradually intensifying. Some architects theorize that the Walker is learning, through its prolonged sleep, how to exist without consuming the universe around it, that when it awakens, it will be a more mature and sustainable version of itself. Others fear that the awakening will be even more catastrophic than its original existence, because it will have had eons to accumulate power and wisdom without the limitations of active consciousness. A third theory, more optimistic but also stranger, suggests that the Walker is not destined to awaken alone, that it is waiting for the development of other cosmic consciousnesses, perhaps created by civilizations that learned from the architect's mistakes, with which it can share its existence and divide the energetic costs of its magnificence. Perhaps the deepest lesson of the interplanetary roads is not about cosmic engineering, technological transcendence, or even the limits of conscious ambition. Perhaps it is a more subtle and fundamental lesson about accepting limitations, about finding beauty in imperfection, about understanding that some distances are sacred and should not be eliminated. The universe is vast and silent, not by accident, nor by technological limitation, but by deep cosmic design. The void between stars is not a problem to be solved, but a sacred space for contemplation, a laboratory for the development of individual consciousnesses, a garden where diversity can flourish in isolation before being networked together. Distance is not an enemy to be defeated, but a patient teacher reminding us that some journeys are more important than destinations, that the process of connection can be more valuable than connection itself, that the anticipation of union can be sweeter than realized union. On the clearest nights, when we look at the starry sky and feel that inexplicable melancholy that seems part of the universal human experience, that sensation that we are searching for something we lost but never had, perhaps we are feeling echoes of the Walker's dreams. Perhaps our cosmic loneliness is not accidental, but a preparation for future connections that will be more meaningful because we first experienced separation. Perhaps somewhere between the stars we see and those we imagine, a golden line pulses with impossible light, carrying travelers between worlds that exist only when observed, connecting not physical places, but conceptual possibilities, not geographical destinations, but states of consciousness. And perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's next great discovery will not be how to build our own roads between the stars, but how to dream together with the one who already built them, how to participate in the cosmic dreams that permeate the universe, how to add our own visions to the library of impossible experiences that the Walker maintains in its sleep. Because in the end, when all stars burn out and only the roads remain glowing with light that needs no external sources, what will matter will not be how far we traveled or how quickly we arrived, but what stories we carried with us, what dreams we shared along the way, what connections we created that are deeper than merely physical. In the cosmic silence that follows all deep contemplation, a single truth echoes through the vacuum, carried by solar winds and gravitational waves, whispered by the roads themselves when there are no travelers upon them. Not every path needs to lead to a specific somewhere. Sometimes the walking itself is the destination. Sometimes the journey is what transforms us from travelers into something much grander, into cosmic storytellers, into bearers of dreams that transcend species and civilizations, into participants in a universal conversation that began with the Big Bang and will continue long after the last star burns out. And in that final moment, when the universe cools to absolute zero and only the roads and the walkers' dreams remain, they will continue connecting not places, but possibilities, not worlds, but imaginations, not civilizations, but the eternal idea that connection is possible, that loneliness is not permanent, that somewhere, somehow, there is always a golden road waiting to take brave consciousnesses on journeys that redefine not just where they are, but who they are.